All right. Well, everybody knows Tim Lambert is THSC and really is the face of it. But one of the guys that I'm going to introduce right now, Jeremy Newman. He is I don't know what his title is because he's in my office all the time. He's the Director of Public Policy. He is a young man, but he is mature beyond his years. I've watched him on my bills and on others testify before often very hostile people to what he's talking about. He does an amazing job. It is our privilege to have him as part of our organization. And so if y'all would welcome Jeremy Newman up here. I don't know where he is. There he is.
All right, am I too tall for this? Can you guys hear me? All right, well, thank you guys all for coming. We really appreciate you being here. As James said, my name is Jeremy Newman, Policy Director for THSC. And, I was thinking about, we chose the theme of courage for this year's gala. And I didn't quite think about at the time that I was going to be speaking about courage to a room full of the most politically active, most conservative people in the state of Texas. So I recognize there's like a little bit of irony in the fact that you guys, for the most part, are really the people who brought courage to the modern political scene in Texas politics. But despite the fact that you deserve some serious credit for that, there's this other aspect of courage that I want to talk about that I think we often overlook. And it's really, there's more to the face value of courage that I think we often recognize. I'm going to give you a little bit of an example to that, which is that most of us here in this room are very politically active, politically involved. We're aware of those issues. We get out there during the campaigns and we do that work, and we get out there during the legislative session and we do that work, and we work the issues, and we're passionate about them, and we care about them, and I would say we fight that battle courageously. But there's more to it than that, because the political battle in Texas, really everywhere, but especially in Texas, can be so all-encompassing that it's really easy for us to forget that there's also a cultural battle going on in America and in Texas. And so we get so laser focused on this particular race or on this particular bill that we forget that sometimes. And I guess what I want to suggest to you guys is that good policy isn't good enough. It's good, it's important, we have to have it, but it can't be the only thing that we work on, the only thing that we care about. And the reason for that is it's kind of like the scriptural equivalent of building your house on the sand. Right, that when you build your house on the sand, it will fall. And in the culture's case, the reason it will fall is because if we only have good policy, then we're going to end up with a culture that is not morally strong enough to sustain that policy. And so then we have this other problem that we have to think about, because there's this other aspect to the way that we view politics in Texas, which is that it's tangible compared to the cultural battle. Right, and we were out there working on a very particular bill or on a very particular race, and you can see it, you can feel it, you can touch it. It's like it's a goal that you can really easily conceptualize. But when you're talking about the cultural battle, where do you start when you're trying to change the hearts and minds of 300 million people? That's a really difficult question. And how do you win a battle that never ends? So there are these questions that I think kind of reside in the back of our minds that we never really easily answer, because it's intimidating to think about the size of the battle and the endless nature of the battle that we're fighting. And it's a really daunting concept to have to grapple with. And so I would suggest to you guys that especially when it comes to public policy, one of the things that's important is that our policy work not exist inside this bubble where we view it as just good policy and we pass it because it's good policy. We have to work on policy that affects the culture, and we have to craft the policy and prioritize the policy based on its effect of the culture. So let me give you guys a couple examples that THSC has several particular issues that we're prioritizing for this coming session. Two of those are CPS reform and family law reform. And on the family law issue, we're trying to codify the constitutional protections that exist for families and parents to be able to raise their children. The opposition that we face on those issues primarily comes from people who believe that the barrier for entry for the government to be able to get into the home and inject itself into these family relationships should be as low as possible so that they can conceivably solve as many problems as possible. Well, that is a cultural perception that we're grappling with, and it's manifesting itself in the policy world. And so when we're working on these issues, it's not just a good policy that we're promoting. We're picking and prioritizing those particular policies because we realize that they have a cultural effect. And the counter presumption that we bring to this battle is that families have a God-given right and a responsibility to raise their own children. And that families are kind of the first line of offense and the last line of defense when it comes to the cultural war. And so we're not just picking policies that are good, we're picking policies that we think affect that cultural battle and that empower families to fight that battle. So that kind of goes back to one of the questions I asked earlier is, how do you win a war of hearts and minds for 300 million people? Well, I would suggest to you that the way that you do that is with each family. You empower each family to be able to fight that battle for you. And so that's one of the goals that we're trying to bring to the policy arena, is that it's about more than just the policy. That's not the only thing that we're grappling with here. And I get the same question about the Tim Tebow bill, which is one of the other issues that we deal with every legislative session, one of our priorities. And for context, for anyone who doesn't know what the issue is, it relates to allowing homeschool students compete in UIL extracurricular activities at the local school. And so I get questions from people who say, well, is that a priority issue? Like, aren't there other issues that are a bigger deal? And what I explain to them is this is one of the biggest obstacles that a lot of families face when they're deciding whether or not they're going to homeschool. And so you have this big percentage of people who are deciding whether or not homeschooling is best for their kids. And traditionally, if they're thinking about it, it's because there's a serious problem in the status quo that they recognize, and they're trying to figure out what the best option is for their kids. And there are these barriers to entry for them to pursue the options that they think are best for their children. And statistically, this is one of the largest ones. So the reason that we prioritize it is because we want to eliminate as many barriers as possible for families to be able to pursue the options that are best for their children. And so all of these issues, all three of the ones that I just mentioned, we prioritize because of the cultural effect that they're having. And I would suggest to you guys that is the viewpoint that we have to start adopting on our policy issues and on our involvement in all of these issues. It's not just about winning this race. It's not just about passing this bill. It's about winning races and passing bills that affect the cultural battle. And I think that the viewpoint we have to adopt is that the American family is really the best defense against cultural degeneracy, and in some ways the only defense that we have. And ultimately, if we win this battle, it's going to be won around the dinner table of the modern American family. So thank you guys all for coming. Really appreciate you being here. We actually have a short video that we're going to show that I hope will communicate to you guys the heart that THSC has about why we individually as team members are involved in this battle.